It's cold out here. What's up, everybody? My name is Francis, and we are right here at Johnny's First Street location. We're going to be doing our very first hair jam of the year. The aim for this hair jam is to encourage collaboration and team dynamic within the space. So come along and come join me. Good morning, people. How are you? I'm extremely grateful for you guys for showing up and hanging out with me here for the first hair jam of the year. It's gonna be ever evolving for this year, and I figured I'd start the first one and talk about some of the things that I'm passionate about doing. So without further ado, we're gonna be focusing on Afro hair today, 3C, 4C type of vibes. We got Adam here as our model. Shout out, Adam. Make it look really, really contrasted. So what I'm gonna do for today's haircut is keep the areas here really dark and freehand that with a little bit of trimmer work, and then add the fade towards the sides here and really just follow the contour on the back of his ear. Not bringing it too low, because what I find is then it looks, the fade becomes the focal point, and I don't want the fade to become the focal point of the haircut. I want it to be like a cherry on top, something to kind of just like add a little bit of zhuzh. The whole style is this full silhouette. The fade is just an accent piece, right? So that's why we're not gonna make that go all the way up. What you're gonna see me do today is we're gonna put this a little bit around the hairline and drop it down towards the ear and have a really nice like transition from short hair to the curls on top. For the top, typically we'll do like a number 5 guard, you know, a couple of inches, but for today we're just gonna freehand it with some scissor work, and I'll show you guys what we can do to create a really cool shape with just using scissors for this type of hair, right? You know, it's trending right now, so we are gonna keep the back for the mully, and then we're gonna line it up nice and sharp so we can really add and make that contrast pop out. When you start positioning and putting out the or where you choose to put the contrast with the fades, it's really going to be the deal breaker here. Having the sideburns here really, really dark, connecting with the front hairline. But the main thing that I think about is you want to be able to utilize a couple fundamentals of principles of design, which is like focal point. And what are we going to focus on? What I like is to accentuate the hairline there. Okay, very simply, all we're gonna do is grab your scissors. We're gonna tighten this up first. So I'm gonna take a look where I want the shape to be. So all we're gonna do is we're just gonna freehand it. Freehand it to get those little hairs in place. For really like tight curls, it's really difficult to run a comb and scissors on it. So what I do is pick it out, really pick it out, and just set the general shape with scissors. You can also use clippers for this, but I find I'm more consistent and I'm more efficient with the scissors. The clippers, you know, you get distracted and you drop it down, then you're screwed. Then now, it's gonna be a buzz cut. Has anybody tried running down clippers with the grain as opposed to against the grain? Do you guys know what that means, with the grain, against the grain? So with the grain, it's kind of just like the growth pattern grows this way and you're just cutting it with it. Against is just against, right? Have you guys ever tried to do that, and what did you guys notice? Against the grain is shorter, and then with the grain, it doesn't cut as short. So that's one thing to keep in mind too. Like when you're really taking it down, they say number 5, right? You don't want to shock them by just going against the grain right away, especially if they're coming with really, really big hair. I would go with the grain first. Set the foundation, set the shape, and then naturally, you can always just go back and cut more. And that's a philosophy that I follow when I'm curating these hairstyles. I always give myself room. I'm a little bit more conservative, especially if it's a restyle, because if you don't, you can't make it grow back in two seconds. So, but you can always cut it more afterwards. So I'm looking at here. Typically, you'll have a mirror in front of you when you're shaping the top here. But since we want to get the aesthetics out, you know, no mirror, we'll just be looking at him. So it's a little bit more like poofy there, so we'll just grab that a little bit. So towards the end of the haircut, we're gonna pick it out again to see if we've missed any hairs. But I think right now, I am happy with where that is. Sitting to the back, if you guys see here, a little bit more tapered around the ears, and then we'll just fade that out. Cool, now we're done. Thank you, everybody. Okay, let's add this fade. So the way I see fades, and when I'm doing fades on the side of the head, it's always just an accent piece for the whole shape. It's never the focal point anymore. Before, I took pride in being a fade master, whatever that meant, or like a super tight. And I remember, you know, I would always talk to Adam, like, yo, this fade's sick. But I feel like it's just it's a short-lived win, you know, especially when the hair grows back in 2 days. So I always like to use contrast. That's how I kind of word it in my brain now. It's more of a contrast and accent piece for the overall shape. So for this specific haircut, as mentioned, we're gonna go set our first guideline with the trimmers, and we're gonna angle it to follow the contour of his head. So I'm gonna go like this, turn that in. We wanna keep the hairline dark, so I'm not gonna go in and set it straight to the head. I'm angling it so we can reserve some of that hair. So we're gonna go in. And towards the back of the ear, I'm gonna go the opposite way so we can really have 100% control of the shape and kind of just like match it to the midpoint here. After that's set, I just blend underneath, take all those hairs out. First guideline, just around the ear. Can you guys kind of imagine how this is gonna turn out already? Right, and then the second step is gonna be here, and then we're gonna blend that to the longer hairs there. But I'll set the first guideline. Since his hair was already short, I didn't come in with a clipper to set the foundation here, but I'll do that just so you guys can see the benefit of having a even foundation before starting your fade. Something I learned very quickly when working with Johnny's is the fundamentals of aesthetic judgment. And aesthetic judgment is, if you guys have taken my class before, I've talked about it very briefly, but it's something that as a creator, as an artist, as somebody with the power to do all these styles, it's something that you have to personally hone. It's gonna be a byproduct of investing time in education, inspiration, like what do you do to feel inspired about all these kind of things. I use aesthetic judgment almost every time now, right? So when I'm thinking about this fade, I'm visualizing, if I want the fade to feel contrasted but not the main focal point, I wouldn't set it up so high. If I want a lot of gradiency, which is what I want here, I'll set it a little bit lower. So a lot of that just comes from experience, but the good thing to follow when you're doing it just behind the chair is, if you want like a low fade, you know, something that just follows the ear would be like a good general idea to follow. Mid fade, maybe like eyebrow level, right? That's where you start your first guidelines. High fade is like past the eyebrow into the hairline. So those are some of the things that I looked at in the beginning, but now it's just more like a feeling thing. It's really hard to teach how to feel hair, and that's something you guys are gonna have to, you know, start the journey on your own. If you haven't started looking at hair in a more of a holistic kind of view, then it gets really repetitive, you know. And for me, the reason why I can come in with so much excitement, you know, with every haircut that sits in my chair is I'm always exercising that aesthetic judgment, right? How can I make this just a little bit better? And taking pride in your work in doing that. There's a general flow that I follow, like low fade with the ear and stuff like that. But it changes throughout the whole haircut, and that's why you'll see me do one side first, finish it, and then do the other side. But what I always do is I always ask, especially if it's a first-time guest, hey, how's the right side looking? Because if you haven't built rapport, trust on the chair yet, it gets really tough to just be creative and have them trust you with what you're doing. So I'll ask them, yo, how's the right side doing? You like the fade? How is it sitting? Oh, you want the shorter? Okay, we'll adjust it and then change it on the other side. So that's gonna be a really helpful tool, especially for the ones that's just starting out in the industry. Because you never wanna feel like, I don't know if he likes the haircut or not, because we've all been there. And then by the end of the haircut, you put product in, they'll say, can we go a little shorter, maybe? And then now you're an hour behind. If he came in, going back to the haircut here, if he came in with really thick, like if this hair was under here, I'd set the foundation down by cutting it down with one length. Typically, I'll do a 1.5 or a number 2, go against the grain, and just make sure that it's really, really even, just like so. Towards the back, we're gonna angle the clippers and follow the contour of the head. So we'll go this way. See how it's all even now? Before you start your fade, if the foundation isn't even, it's not gonna look as gradient as you would want it to be. Second step, we're gonna do a lever open, no guard with the clipper. And we're gonna take our first guideline, maybe like pinky, like half an inch deep, right? Or half an inch wide. And same thing, following the contour, lever open. At this stage, I like to use, especially if I'm like doing like a nice curvature in the head, I like to use half the blade only, not the full blade. It's gonna allow me full control when I'm setting my guidelines. So when fading hair, you wanna leave yourself adequate room to blend. One of the biggest mistakes that I see, especially for beginner barbers, is they do their guidelines too tight. And when it's too tight, the blend doesn't really come out as clean. So before we move on to the next guide, we're gonna erase, quote unquote, the bottom guideline by closing the lever all the way open or all the way closed with the clipper, and we're gonna lightly tap into the very bottom line there. This method of fading from experience is what I've found to be the most consistent. The reason being is the fact that you can use the same system for all different types of hair. So we're gonna lightly tap the bottom and to blend in between, a couple notches up, and we're only utilizing the corners of the blade to create a beautiful transition. Boom, that's the first step. Before you move on to the next step, it's imperative that this step is as clean as you can get it, because it's gonna set as the first foundation for the gradiency of the fade, right? Okay, now since we've set this with a 1.5 guard, we're gonna blend into that with the number 1 guard, lever open first, and then slowly flick away and soften up this dark spot. Number 1, open into the 1.5, we're gonna flick it out, utilizing the corners as well. Throughout this whole haircut, you're not gonna see me use the full blade. When we're fading hair, we're trying to create, it needs to be gradient, right? So from short to long, it needs to be a smooth transition. All I'm doing is just like, I feel like I'm a stonemason again. Like I love to use that analogy because it's so accurate. I'm just taking away hair, but the style itself is already there, right? You're just chipping away at it little by little until you achieve the desired result. So as you can see with this method, we're not creating 1, 2, 3, 4 different guidelines. I get lost in my own sauce. I yap a lot behind the chair. So if I'm creating guideline after guideline after guideline, there's days where I'm like, did I do number 1 yet? Let me just do it just in case. And then now that's too much time spent on the haircut. And then now you're overthinking because you're running late, and now they feel like you're rushing. It's a mess, right? So what I do is stick with one system and kind of just start curating it so that it feels right to you when you're using it behind the chair. I put a 0 guard or a 0.5 guard on this, and this is what's gonna allow the fade to kind of be brought back to life. I've started blending that in. If you've noticed, I'm still utilizing the corners of my blade and just very, very lightly tapping into those dark spots that I see. Now, one of the coolest things about understanding your fundamental steps in approaching the hair, especially for short hair like this, is it allows you to be yourself, right? You're not worried about, is this gonna work, is this not gonna work? You can adjust and adapt just depending on like the bone density, or like if they have like little bumps on their heads or different textures of hair. It's a lot easier to adapt when you understand what each step does. So I'm just gonna go on the bottom here with lever halfway open and just lightly flick out those little hairs. What you're gonna notice me do here now is, as I start getting higher to the fade, I raise the lever just a couple notches up. Because you don't wanna accidentally cut away too much hair. All we're doing is just refining the gradiency and breaking up those dark spots that we see. Next part, what you're gonna notice sometimes is when you start lining it up, it'll start showing some dark spots that your eyes miss. That's fine. So what I do is once you're happy with the base fade of the hair, line it up and it'll show you the dark spots that you've missed, right? So once you've lined it up, feel free to go back and really make that fade, make it pop. Boom, first side, done. What do you think so far? Turn him. That's the shape. Notice how the focal point isn't the fade, it's more of just an accent piece for the whole shape, right? And that's why I left these hairs a little bit longer too, so that the darkness of the hairline here really makes the accent fade pop out a little bit more. When you're thinking about principles of design, you know, you gotta find like little things to focus on and little focal points in the haircut, right? Okay, we're gonna go through the motion on the other side here. We'll show you in real time on how it could be done, right? There is something to be said about respecting the hair for how it naturally sits. Like if he had a indent here, naturally you don't do, yeah. Thank you for that, he needed that. Naturally, when light hits him, when the hair grows in, within that indentation the hair looks darker, right? So something that I've done in the past that's worked is this is a method that I use from time to time, just depending on I guess the client, and what I'm doing is I'll stretch the skin out and I'll go shorter than what that baseline is. Say it's a 2, I'll go 1.5, and I'll go in to the indentation just to kind of create a little bit more of a seamless transition, right? But I think the bottom line is, a lot of guests don't really know the difference between a good haircut and a great haircut. So for barbers, a great haircut would be like no dark spots. They just want a fade, you know? So I think using your judgment on would he appreciate if I made that super crisp? Or would he appreciate it if it was just natural? And he knows that there's indentations there and that his hair kind of grows out that way. So it depends on, you know, per situation and stuff. You can approach it in both ways. You can clean it up, see how I'm doing this side? It's just smooth. Because I know he would appreciate that. This side, I'm actually gonna touch it up a little bit more to make it smoother, but in terms of how to get rid of it, how to get rid of the line, you can stretch the skin like so and kind of go in with the length that's slightly shorter on what the base is. One tool that I found is having a constant communication with the guest as I'm cutting the hair. So we'll do consultation, right? 5-10 minutes, whatever. Okay, dope, we're on the same page. But then towards the end of the haircut, they're like, can we go shorter? Can we go? For me, that's a sign of, it's not their fault because they didn't know what they wanted. It was our fault for not inquiring enough. Because they'll have questions they didn't know they had. It's our job to be like, okay, so how does this side look? Looks good, okay, how's the other side look? How's the back look? How does he feel? Is it too heavy, too dense, whatever? That's our role. And it's up to us to start identifying these problems for our guests so that when they come out of the chair, 1, they feel heard, 2, they got a dope experience, and 3, they're gonna be locked in for you for however many years, right? Because you're somebody that solves problems that they didn't even know they had. And you become, through their eyes, a subject matter expert. And when you're subject matter expert to somebody, they'll never go anywhere. Because they'll say, yo, this guy just knows what I want. Well, it's because I inquired about it. I asked about it, and I didn't assume that they wanted a fade or a high fade or whatever, right? So a lot of that is, a lot of the problems that you guys are asking can be solved through just communicating with them. If you don't know where to start, it's a lack of information from the guests. You don't know what they want. So to solve that, ask. What's important to you? Do you want tight size? Okay, how tight do you want to go? okay, do you want it clippered out? Do you want just scissors? How often do you come back? Is it every 6 weeks or 3 weeks? Because those things are gonna be indicators. It's like your blueprint. You're picking out ideas, that's coming from them. And then you're curating this kind of like this style just based on the responses. If they say, I don't know, you start inquiring a little bit more by like, do you like it to look like really intense with the fade, or is it something a little bit more natural? Is there an event you're trying to go to? Like, that's something I factor in. Because if they're going to like a wedding or something, I typically don't make it look sharp. Just on the photos, like when somebody takes a flick at you, it looks so much better when it's not like overly lined up. If you don't know where to start, ask, right? Like, that's gonna give you your best foundation. And then, you know, setting up like how to cut. Should we cut the sides first, the top first? That's gonna be preference. To put it simply, this is what I did. I will do the sides first. Clipper out the top, or a section out the top, horseshoe section, whatever. And then start with one side. If you're right-handed, I like to start on the right side. If they just want a super clean look, but without clippers, vertical sections, right? And then just got vertical sections, line it up, ask them, how do they look? Oh, I want it tighter, make it tighter a little bit around the ears, use a little bit of clipper over comb, how's that? So something like that could be something you could use behind the chair. For lining up, this is gonna be the scariest part for some people. Always start in the middle, because it's a lot easier to go from point A in the middle to point B, as opposed to here all the way here. You're traveling a lot farther, right? So there's gonna be a lot more room for errors. So what I do is I like to shorten that up and focus on one side only. So first of all, if they have a bunch of hair in their face before you line it up, just wipe it down, you know? So when you're starting up the lineup, make sure they're not tilting their head, because if they are, then it's gonna be crooked. Make sure they're not going like this, because it's gonna be crooked. It's like with the bob, right? If somebody's doing a bob, and then you know that their legs are crossed and they go like this towards the end, it's a nightmare, right? So make sure they're looking straight, looking good. We're gonna start in the middle. You wanna tap it, that's it. You don't wanna create crazy long gestures, just tap the hairline and just accent it like so. What I find is if you angle the corners very, very slightly up, if you angle it up very slightly, if you're looking at it this way, it looks the most natural, as opposed to following the line straight down. What do you think would happen if we just follow it straight down? It would look like this, a little bit, right? It wouldn't look as straight, because one thing we forget to factor is the forehead, it's not straight all the way. It curves too, right? So what we're doing is just following the natural curvature of the forehead. At this stage, the mirror is gonna be your best friend. If you don't have a mirror, look at them directly so you can see, okay, it's looking straight. What I do is I use the finger, middle finger, ring finger, and I kind of just like place it on the forehead a little bit. What that does is it lessens the shape. But if you guys can notice, I'm barely tapping the skin. With trimmers, they can get a little bit irritating if you're always just hitting the same spots. So one, make sure they're not overly sharp. Two, make sure you're only hitting the hairs that need to be hit. That's it. I think what I'm gonna do is we're gonna do a little bit of scissor over comb, soften up the blend there. But for the most part, the general haircut is pretty much 90% done. This is the next part we're gonna do is a little bit more personalization. And it's something that I think you guys should be really adding to your services, because it's what makes you stand out. The little things that you do, the guests notice it. And when they can see that you care and you're prideful about your work, it's a lot easier to fill up your books. You know, like I'd pay somebody that cares about what they do, even if it's not the best haircut. Like if I go to an environment and somebody is take a lot of pride in what they do, it makes it a lot more of an enjoyable experience. And at that point, it's like, price point doesn't matter, because you're just providing something that nobody else does. So at this stage, doing a little bit of scissor over comb and really softening up that blend. I don't want a lot of weight buildup, so you're gonna see me kind of go in towards the hair here. Because if I was to pull it out, then I wouldn't be cutting any hairs, right? So with scissor over comb, one of the key factors is having a really still bottom blade and just the top blade moving, right? Because you want to be consistent in how much it cuts and where it cuts. If you're quacking, it's gonna be really tough to get a consistent cut all the way around. So a practice that I did, especially when I wasn't busy cutting out, just be sitting down, just go like this, and literally just go like this the whole day. 30 minutes a day, 3 sets of 12. Now we check the mirror for evenness, even intensity. Perfect. Okay, this next part, we're gonna shape up just underneath here, just so we can get those little stubbles. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay Adam back here a little bit. All we're gonna do, like I wanna keep the sidebars here natural. But what I wanna do is just really sharpen up these areas. Again, it's gonna add with the contrast that we're adding to the overall look. Okay, sick, dude. Thank you guys for showing up. Thank you.